The room fell silent when the billionaire CEO pointed toward the exit and told the single father to go back to his scrapyard. Dozens of executives watched as the exhausted man stood there in an old work jacket, holding a folder filled with documents that could save the company from collapse. The CEO laughed at him, convinced that a man who spent his days repairing broken machines had no place among powerful business leaders. But then the doors opened, and a decorated admiral walked into the room. He looked directly at the single father, smiled with unmistakable respect, and called him by name. What happened next left the entire room speechless. Before we begin this emotional story, if you believe that kindness, courage, and second chances can change someone's life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to Bright Hearts. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us that a person's worth is never measured by their clothes, their job, or the size of their bank account. 39-year-old Marcus Vail had learned long ago that life did not always reward good people quickly. Sometimes, it tested them first. For 7 years, he had raised his 9-year-old son, Jonah, alone. His wife had died unexpectedly after a long illness, leaving Marcus with a mountain of grief, unpaid bills, and a little boy who still woke up some nights asking when his mother was coming home. Marcus had no time to fall apart. Every morning, he prepared Jonah's breakfast, packed his school bag, and drove him to school before heading to the small scrapyard he had inherited from his late father. The yard sat on the edge of town, surrounded by rusted machinery, old engines, discarded metal, and piles of broken equipment that most people considered worthless. To Marcus, however, nothing was truly worthless. He had spent years learning how to take damaged machines apart, understand their failures, and give them another chance at life. His hands were permanently marked by grease and small scars. His clothes were rarely clean for more than an hour. But behind his tired appearance was an extraordinary mechanical mind that few people had ever taken the time to notice. One rainy Tuesday morning, Marcus received an unexpected phone call from a major defense manufacturing company called Northstar Dynamics. The company was facing a serious crisis. A critical component used in one of its emergency response systems had repeatedly failed during testing, and the company was losing millions of dollars. Marcus had discovered the same component years earlier in an abandoned military vehicle that had been sold for scrap. He had repaired it, studied its design, and eventually developed a modification that could prevent the failure. He had spent months trying to contact Northstar Dynamics, but no one had taken him seriously. Finally, one junior engineer had seen a video Marcus posted online demonstrating his design and forwarded it to someone inside the company. That was how Marcus ended up receiving an invitation to present his solution to the company's executive board. Marcus almost didn't go. That morning, Jonah had a fever. Marcus sat beside his son's bed, holding a cool cloth against his forehead while watching the clock. He had promised Jonah that he would never leave him alone when he was sick. But this meeting could change everything. If Northstar accepted his design, Marcus could finally pay off the medical debt left behind after his wife's illness, repair the leaking roof over their heads, and give Jonah the stable life he deserved. After arranging for a trusted neighbor to stay with Jonah, Marcus drove through heavy rain toward Northstar's headquarters. He wore his cleanest shirt and the only jacket he owned that wasn't covered in grease stains. He carried his folder carefully against his chest, protecting the drawings inside as though they were something precious. The headquarters was a massive glass building that seemed to belong to another world. Marcus stepped through the revolving doors and immediately felt out of place. Men in expensive suits moved around him while employees hurried across polished marble floors. A receptionist looked at his worn jacket and then at the folder in his hands before asking whether he was there for maintenance. Marcus calmly explained that he had been invited to meet the executive board. The receptionist's expression changed, but not into respect. It was surprise. After several minutes of waiting, Marcus was finally escorted upstairs. He entered a conference room where 12 executives sat around a long table. At the far end sat 47-year-old Everett Crane, the CEO of Northstar Dynamics. Everett was famous for his ruthless business style and his ability to make people feel small with a single glance. Marcus placed his folder on the table and began explaining his invention. He spoke clearly, without trying to impress anyone. He explained exactly why the existing component failed under extreme pressure and showed how his modification could prevent the problem. For several minutes, the room was quiet. Then Everett leaned back in his chair and laughed. He asked Marcus where he had learned engineering. Marcus explained that he had taught himself through years of working with machinery and studying technical manuals. Everett looked around the room as if he had just heard the funniest joke of his life. One executive asked whether Marcus had a university degree. Marcus admitted that he didn't. Another asked whether he had ever worked for a major engineering company. Again, Marcus said no. Everett slowly closed the folder. He told Marcus that Northstar Dynamics was not a place where scrapyard mechanics came to teach professionals how to do their jobs. Marcus tried to explain that his design had been tested successfully, but Everett interrupted him. The CEO pointed toward the door and told him to go back to his scrapyard, where broken machines belonged. The words struck Marcus harder than Everett could have known. For one painful second, Marcus thought about his father. The old man had taught him that broken things deserve patience, not ridicule. He remembered sitting beside his father as a child, watching him repair an engine everyone else had given up on. His father had once told him that the greatest mistake people made was confusing something damaged with something useless. Marcus quietly gathered his papers. He was about to leave when one of the younger engineers suddenly stood up. He had recognized the design. He explained that Marcus's modification could solve the exact problem Northstar had been struggling with for nearly a year. Everett became irritated and ordered the engineer to sit down. But before anyone could speak again, the conference room doors suddenly opened. An Admiral entered. The entire room changed instantly. Admiral Helena Ward was a highly respected military officer who had spent decades overseeing emergency operations and national defense projects. She was accompanied by 2 officers and a senior government representative. Everyone stood except Marcus, who was too stunned to understand what was happening. The Admiral looked around the room. Then her eyes landed on Marcus. Her face immediately softened. She walked straight toward him and called him by name. Marcus Valley. The CEO's expression changed. Marcus stared at her in disbelief. The Admiral told everyone in the room that Marcus was not merely a scrapyard owner. 3 years earlier, during a catastrophic industrial accident at a military recycling facility, Marcus had been working nearby when he noticed a dangerous flaw in a damaged emergency vehicle. He had repaired the vehicle under impossible conditions, allowing rescue teams to reach trapped workers before the structure collapsed. But there was more. The Admiral revealed that Marcus had also saved the lives of 4 soldiers during that incident. He had refused payment, refused recognition, and left before anyone could properly thank him. Marcus had never mentioned any of it. The room became completely silent. The Admiral explained that she had been searching for him ever since. She had recently learned that the mysterious mechanic who had saved those soldiers was the same man whose design Northstar had been struggling to understand. She looked directly at Everett and asked why the company was insulting the man who had just brought them the solution they desperately needed. Everett's face turned pale. The young engineer immediately connected Marcus's design to the company's failed system. Within minutes, the executives were studying the documents Marcus had brought. The more they examined them, the clearer it became that Marcus had solved a problem their highly paid teams had failed to fix. The CEO who had ordered Marcus to return to his scrapyard now stood beside the same table, asking questions about his invention. But Marcus didn't celebrate. Instead, he asked the Admiral whether the workers from the old accident had survived. The Admiral smiled sadly and told him that all 4 had survived. One of them had recently become a father. Marcus lowered his eyes. He quietly said that was all he had ever wanted. That was when the room finally understood who Marcus really was. He wasn't driven by money or recognition. He was driven by the same thing that had kept him going after losing his wife. The belief that when someone was in trouble, you didn't walk away simply because helping them was inconvenient. The Admiral then offered Marcus a position as a technical consultant for a national emergency response program. Marcus hesitated. He didn't want to leave Jonah. He explained that his son needed him. The Admiral surprised him by saying the position could be structured around his responsibilities as a father. For the first time in years, Marcus felt as though someone had seen the whole picture of his life. Not just his dirty hands. Not just his old jacket. Not just his scrapyard. They had seen him. Everett eventually apologized publicly. He admitted that he had judged Marcus based on appearances and nearly rejected the very person who could save his company. Marcus accepted the apology, but he also told Everett something the CEO would never forget. He said that people should be careful about laughing at broken things because sometimes the broken things were the ones holding everything together. Months later, Marcus's life looked completely different. His invention was being used to improve emergency systems, his financial situation had stabilized, and his scrapyard had become a training workshop where young people could learn mechanical skills without expensive university degrees. Jonah still lived with his father in the same modest home. The roof had finally been repaired. The kitchen was warmer. And on the wall of Marcus's workshop hung a photograph of Admiral Helena Ward standing beside him. But Marcus never forgot that rainy morning when he had walked into Northstar's headquarters feeling invisible. He never forgot the laughter. And he never forgot the moment the Admiral called him by name. Because that was the moment he realized something powerful. Sometimes the world doesn't recognize your value until someone with authority points it out. But your value existed long before anyone noticed it. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and leave a comment telling us what lesson you took from Marcus's journey. Your engagement helps Bright Hearts bring more stories of kindness, courage, and second chances to people around the world. And before you leave, make one special request in the comments. Write "Everyone deserves a second chance" if you believe we should never judge a person by their appearance or circumstances. Because somewhere out there may be another Marcus Vale standing quietly in a room, being laughed at because nobody knows what he has survived, what he has built, or how many lives he may one day save. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all is this: never mistake a humble life for a worthless one. The person everyone tells to go back to the scrapyard may be the very person who has the strength to rebuild what everyone else thought was beyond repair.